living through an era of remarkable medical advancements. From 3D printed organs to targeted cancer therapies, there are a lot of advancements that we are witnessing today. Yet, when future generations look back at our times, they will remember these remarkable innovations, or will our truly legacy be the incredible inefficiencies and strains that plagued our healthcare systems? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analytics Insight podcast, where we discuss the cutting edge of technology. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, healthcare is one of the most complex and high stakes industries in the world. Every day, clinicians, administrators, and policymakers are dealing with massive amounts of data, regulatory pressures, and life or death decisions. Over the past few years, AI, particularly generative AI, has promised to ease some of that burden. We have seen co pilots that can draft clinical notes, automate documentation, and even assist in diagnosis. But here's the question: is assistance enough, or do we need AI that can move beyond a passive co pilot into becoming an autonomous agent that can act, decide, and intervene in real time? Let's welcome Kodeeswaran Natarajan, Senior Vice President, Healthcare Delivery, Indium, to help us understand how agentic AI is beginning to reshape healthcare delivery from extracting insights buried in unstructured data to driving real-time interventions in imaging and monitoring and ensuring that all the government governance frameworks keeps it safe and compliant. Hi, Kodeeswaran, how are you doing?
I'm doing very fine. How are you doing, Priya?
I am good too. Thank you so much, Cody. And it's a pleasure to have you with us on our podcast. And I just want to, ensure that refer to you as Cody. I'm sure that's perfectly fine
Yes,
to you.
very much.
Great, great. So Cody, of course, I mean, we are going to talk about one of the industries that is, of course, rapidly advancing. Also, one of the most complex industries alongside finance, if I would say, because there are a lot of trust factors that come into picture when we talk about healthcare. So we are talking about the integration of agentic AI in healthcare. But before we dive deeper into our conversation, we would like to know more about Indium. So if you could help us understand more about the company, its specialization, it would be great.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for this opportunity, Priya, and the Analytics Insights team. It's indeed a great pleasure to be part of this opportunity and the platform to present about our viewpoints on generative AI and typically what AI means to healthcare organization. At Indium is one of the generative AI first digital engineering firm where we keep breathe generative AI in everything we do. When I mention that statement, what it means is our software development lifecycle or product development lifecycle is completely empowered by means of adopting the Gen AI tools. And we do have a dedicated L&D team who focus on training our engineers to be Gen AI fit. So 30% of our organization are comprising of Gen AI engineers who deliver programs outcomes based on adopting the Gen AI platforms, large language models, and through the conversational AI agents. So, Indium currently supports multiple domains, including healthcare, banking and finance, Manlock, retail, and insurance organization. We also recently acquired major stake in Experion, one of the digital engineering firm based out of Trivandrum, and they kind of augment Indium's capability in building niche product, cutting across multiple domains. We also have 7 different delivery centers across India and have a global presence both in US, UK, and in Japan. So that's about it, Indium, Priya.
Great. Thank you so much, Cody, for helping us understand about EDM. And I'm really glad to know that EDM is at the forefront of integrating and applying Gen AI to real world challenges. And it's impressive to see how you're not only delivering program outcomes through advanced Gen AI platform, but also creating tangible impact across critical sectors, including banking, finance, retail, and insurance. So, building on that, I would dive deeper into your journey and contributions as well, Cody. You are a seasoned delivery leader with nearly 2 decades of experience in healthcare technology, specializing in large scale system implementations, digital transformation, and customer engagement. So we would like to know more about you, Cody. How has your journey been till date? And what exactly is your role at Indium?
Okay, so thank you. The journey so far has been fantastic. Anybody living in healthcare, especially in the healthcare tech form, right? The technology solutions means a lot than other domain. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to keep healthcare as a larger stake, because the solution, whatever we are providing in healthcare, it definitely having a meaningful impact because it's going to alleviate the pain of somebody suffering, right, in the broader ecosystem. Whether it's a healthcare payer segment or the provider segment, the end consumer is none other than the patient, who definitely needs a better treatment, better quality of care, and very importantly, the value, for whatever money they are spending in terms of covering their medical benefits and affiliated medical services. So in this context, had been fortunate with working with lots of tier one firms and been with India for the last 3 years. And we are building the healthcare practice with patient first mantra, meaning whatever solutions that we develop, we always think in terms of how the member or patient is going to get benefited, whether it could be a adoption of GenAI technology or an automation avenue. We wanted to see, would this make meaning in terms of someone who is going to get the treatment, whether they are side of the bed or whether they are on the bed. The very important is, would the solution going to help our physician making a better clinical decision? Second thing, would this going to help the patient who is getting the treatment in a well informed manner, right? So that's the two paradigms with which we are operating. And from we started our development with a reliable technology. Now we are in the era, as you rightly said, of Gen AI, where every work we do predominantly be dictated by means of adopting large language models or short language models based on the business need and what industry we are serving, Priya.
Definitely, and it's really inspiring to hear how your role directly contributes to the larger vision of the company. Cody, thank you for sharing that. Moving ahead, I think over the last year, we have all heard the buzz around AI co-pilots. They are helpful, they are supportive, and they're already changing how clinicians handle administrative tasks. But in many ways, co-pilots are still reactive. They wait for human prompts before offering suggestions. Now imagine an AI that doesn't just wait to be asked, but actively monitors patient data streams, identifies risks, and initiates interventions. Now, that's the difference between a passive copilot and an autonomous agent. The shift here is subtle but powerful, definitely. Copilots assist, AI agents act. And in healthcare, where time is critical and precision is non negotiable, this evolution could be game changing. So, we want to understand from you, Cody, that why do you think healthcare needs autonomous AI agents and not just passive copilots?
So great question, Priya. As you rightly said, it's a game-changing moment, right? I think we are pretty much at the top of the inflection point where we started adopting autonomous AI agents. And the question is, can't we just live with co-pilots? Co-pilots, typically the way we have seen, started supporting your development lifecycle, accelerating your throughput, and write efficient codes and everything. And generally, if you take the healthcare ecosystem, it's one of the most complex ecosystem because of there are too many entities in play. There could be a hospital, an intermediary, there could be a laboratory, there could be a healthcare organization, lots of third-party administrative organization, plus there is a health information exchanges, right? You need someone who would be able to orchestrate the data interoperability between the different ecosystem, correct? And why are we doing everything? End of the day, we wanted to make sure there is a personalized engagement, whether it's with the physician or whether it's the member, right? I would probably take both of them as the core personas in the healthcare ecosystem. The one who is suffering, the one who is treating, providing the care to alleviate the pain, alleviate the suffering, right? So whatever AI solution we are opting, right, it's only going to touch either the member or the patient or the physician and the hospital system to a greater extent. Rest, be it the healthcare payer organization or the intermediaries, they're all going to be supportive to these two personas, like and physician community, right? Now, the co-pilots, which is more seen as an engineering co-pilot, right? Which typically support in terms of your efficiency in time to market, build meaningful solution and everything. And generally reactive in nature because it depends upon the prompt what we're giving to the co-pilots, right? Better the prompt, better the output. Whereas an autonomous AI agent is nothing but an cognitive adaptable system which would be able to make the decision in a much structured way. Just case in point, right? For example, I'm getting a authorization to determine whether a treatment is important or not. Typically, we can write a program using Copilot to make certain decision and conditions, right? But you need to have a empathetic touch. You need to understand what the treatment means to the particular patient. You need to look at collectively the different episodes of the treatment and the past medical records. It is basically not replacing a physician, but enabling a physician with more decision making ability. So we are able to save his time in making the right decision, right? So here, an autonomous AI agent would be able to play a lot more critical role than a simple co-pilot, right? As I mentioned, typically in the healthcare ecosystem, lots of the process, be it a claims or education process, or simply getting a patient into the hospital enrollment system, or authorizing a treatment, or oncology related drug administration, or even simply managing some denials in the claims, or appeal management process, or grievances. There could be grievances for a member or a physician that whatever has happened is not right. Everywhere, Copilot would only try to be reactive in nature because it's been structured in certain way. Whereas autonomous AI agent would be able to make decision based on the past, current, and the future trend, right? It would be able to learn by itself. Autonomous AI agent could be empowered with the right amount of training and LLM models, which could make to a self-reliance at least to 95 percentage. We have implemented a few solutions in certain pockets of a healthcare payer system to make a decision in appeals management, denial management, that kind of almost saved 80 to 90% of the operational spend. And this autonomous AI agent is able to sit very well with respect to the decision making. And we also started seeing lots of AI autonomous AI agents are being used in terms of diabetic retinopathy treatment, even identifying some of the cardiovascular diseases and orthopedics, surgical management and everything, right? Which are all gone for an FDA approval. Because typically getting an FDA approval in the healthcare segment would be a little challenging because of one, we are dealing with the patient data. Second thing, it is directly going to impact the way how a patient is going to get treated, right? End of the day, none of these AI agents are going to replace the need of the physician. It's only going to enable them with a better decision making process and going to make a co-joint decision so that a physician can very well validate based on the clinical knowledge and based on the patient conditions, Priya. So that's why we felt the autonomous AI agent is going to be becoming a new normal. Maybe I wouldn't even say a few years, even in few months, right? In terms of healthcare industry. Then the passive co-pilot, which could predominantly seen as supporting for your engineering development and other operational automation segment, Priya.
Definitely, Cody, and I think that's a really insightful perspective. I mean, I really liked your point that when we are talking about autonomous AI agents, it doesn't mean that we are replacing the human touch. It's about, empowering a more accurate decision making where I think doctors can focus, what they can do best, that is patient care, rather than, being buried down in admin tasks and workload. And I think a lot of ways autonomous AI agents truly represent a shift from simply helping or being in partner with healthcare professional. I think they are creating a more efficient, responsive, and a proactive system. And I think that's a very powerful distinction when you talk about co-pilot and an autonomous AI agent. Building on that, I think, like what you just mentioned, I think agentic AI also represents a shift from standard protocols to a more hyper-personalized care at scale. I think it can continuously track patient data to spot early signs of health decline, They can integrate biometrics, behavioral, and environmental data to optimize therapy or tailor treatments using genetic profiles and real time feedback, and then seamlessly coordinate that care with the specialist teams. So, how do you think that agentic AI is enabling real-time interventions in imaging, remote monitoring, and revenue cycle management? If you could, support your theory with some real-world examples, it would be great.
Sure, Priya. We just spoke about autonomous AI agents, right? And what it means to the healthcare ecosystem. Just elaborating it further, right? One of the important shift in the healthcare industry is more of, hey, how soon you will be able to predict the disease, right? Typically, everybody says, right, prevention is better than the cure management, right? So identifying a particular abnormality is going to help the physician having an early intervention so you have a better outcome. That's given. That's been practiced in the medicine field across the globe, right? Now let's try to take a look at this one, right? How generative AI platform is going to support this entire study. Say what happens is, I'll just take an example of an oncology hospital. Somebody treats the different types of cancer either in India or in US or in the UK segment. So say there is like a 40 or 50 plus patients undergoing a brain imaging study. Could be a MRI or a contrast MRI or a CT study, right? What typically happens is it will go to the pathologist and they go to study the imaging maps, try to do the graph in terms of is it really abnormal, is it normal, right? Typically they will take this one. So what will happen if there is 60 to 70 patients? Typically, the workload will be more, and the pathologist may not be able to serve everybody in a well-structured capacity. Normally, within a day, they may not be able to turn out the observation. It will take few days. Okay, take a case. There is a space-occupying lesion in a brain imaging study. Consider it's a patient with some neurological disorders, right? We don't know at the onset of the imaging there could be a SOL. The SOL could be a simple calcification, or it could be a malignant, or it could be a benignant, a simple one. But they need to do a clinical correlation study before even coming to a conclusion. Correct. So this is where agent AI is going to play a vital role. What it can do is we can train a particular large language models with the help of several thousands of brain MRI or CT, contrast CT or X-ray kind of imaging reports. The moment a pathologist would come to know a particular imaging study, it can compare with the several thousands of similar imaging patterns and try to quickly recommend whether this is going to be a malignant or benignant. Does it need any final medical intervention in terms of subsequent treatment, everything, right? The decision making is going to become very faster. As you rightly asked, right? Hey, remote monitoring, revenue cycle management, imaging, agentic AI is definitely going to disrupt the way how the physician and the physician assistant, the support staffs are working in the interclinical equation today. And very importantly, what happens is most of the places it's being adopted in the remote monitoring. I'll give a case in point, right? One of our customers, they are the kidney care providers. Normally, we call something called CKD. It's a critical kidney disease where we do help them in terms of undergoing the treatment on terms of this dialysis, ketodialysis, hemodialysis, and everything, right? And they do have something called home dialysis where they would allow the patients to get treatment, the dialysis at the home with the support function of the remote monitoring mechanisms, some variables and everything. Now, what will happen is, right, if you need to allow a patient to have a home dialysis, then you need to have the right real-time monitoring sensors, implants to make sure whether their vitals are in control. Should they need a medical intervention? By what means they should have a medical intervention? Everything, right? And the bedside physician may not be available throughout the day, right? In particularly during this time of interventions, the agent AI would be able to monitor everything and could prompt the command center in case of any adversities, right? Third aspect on the revenue cycle management, because it's one of the important, largely administrative in nature, because of they got to the order to cash management, right? It is always a challenging one, right? and there are lots of denials happening. So you need to have an agentic AI who would be able to understand, hey, what kind of data I'm getting in? Is the data good enough to get a particular claim process? Is the data good enough to get a particular reinvestment settlement a little earlier? Right? Is the data good enough to get an authorization approval on ahead of time, so there would not be any delay with respect to a patient getting a treatment, right? So, long story short, in all those three topics that you have mentioned, Priya, whether it's imaging or remote monitoring and revenue cycle management, right? Agentic AI is definitely going to disrupt in the way how currently it's being worked upon, right? So, and we at Indium started supporting several of our customers, especially on the revenue cycle management, to completely automate the patient-physician conversation, derive clinical insights from the conversation, automatically upload the data into the respective EMR application or a clinical health record application, then start building a potential claim submission records so that the intervention by the typical business process analyst could be shortened. Okay. So this is just a beginning. I wouldn't say, we are all matured in that particular segment, but I think the early indication definitely show a huge potential in terms of leveraging this agentic AI without compromising anything on the data security aspects or on the outcome aspects.
That's fascinating, Cody, and thank you for breaking it down with those real world scenarios. I think what really stands out is how these interventions are happening in real time and they're reducing delays and eventually, they're ensuring better outcomes, not just for the providers, but for patients as well. And it's glad to know that, we are advancing towards such an era where, along with the advancements in technology, we are able to provide that better healthcare that probably every human deserves. Moving ahead, so I think AI is already being used in healthcare, and most existing solutions are limited to specific tasks and don't integrate well with essential systems. So, this leads to inefficiencies instead of easing the workload. Now, agentic AI here, of course, takes a different approach. It works within existing infrastructure. Then, it helps healthcare organizations to manage the growing demands by improving its decision making, streamlining operations, and optimizing resource allocation as well. Of course, when we're talking about integrating AI into healthcare, it requires a structured approach that very well aligns with both the short term needs and long term goals. So, what are some aspects that you think we should keep in mind when deploying agentic AI?
Okay. I think this is more of the implementation part, right? So far, we have been talking about the art of possible and art of execution, as you
Right.
rightly said. When we are trying to, put this agent AI solution in any of this value stream, in my view, right? First one is, hey, how should I gather my data, right? When we talk about AI, the responsible AI would, or I should say, should be in the subconscious mind, right? We don't want to implement a solution which would end up in compromising the data. I mean, especially in payer segment or healthcare segment or banking segment, right? Whether it's a financial data or a personal data, data is a data. And we should treat every data as a human in the sense it's about their well-being, it's about their medical information. Correct. So the first priority should be given for a responsible AI. How I'm going to structure my AI implementation without compromising my data. Should it be leveraging an cloud platform or should it be an offline LLM models, whatever it is? And how should I define the boundaries to manage the decision making within the limited set of data I am providing? Because there are certain customers, they're so particular that, hey, we don't want to leverage a simple agent AI or LLM solution just because it's available, right? We wanted to see how better our clinical pathways can be configured. And in comparing this with some of the industry trends with respect to treating a particular specific treatment, say, for example, multiple sclerosis, right? Or a Parkinson or an Alzheimer, just an example. So these are all not so prevalent like some of our non-communicable diseases like your diabetics or your cardiovascular or your hypertension related, right? These are all high segmented disease which is life threatening, and obviously when you're devising some solution either to engage a patient or helping a physician making a decision, what would be the immediate thing is How can you fine tune this model to support my clinical pathways and ensure that my segmented population is going to get benefited? We don't want to be very precise, a general vanilla flavor of whatever should be, but it should be very precise and pointed, right? So that's the first one. The data governance and security guardrails of the particular data, right? That's becoming more critical because we are living in a healthcare ecosystem where the PHI, the we normally call as a personal health identifiable data, PHI, right? That is going to be important. Second thing is there is a lot of HIPAA laws, the high trust framework and everything, which kind of provide a focused point of view on how the data should be secured and how the privacy should be maintained, what kind of framework that you should adopt so that it would not go beyond the particular four boundaries of the framework. Now, second part, especially when it comes to this one, right? The way how I would foresee is when we develop a model, right? There is this bias and fairness are very essential for this particular development. End of the day, we're going to provide a technology solution for a business problem, correct? And a model just cannot throw out some raw data for somebody consumption. It should be a clinically meaningful explanation that could help physician assistant to make a decision. Third important thing when it comes to integrating it, right? We need to recommend a multidisciplinary A review board in one way or other, right? Who should be comprises of your data scientist, your architectural AA council members, then your consumers, basically the clinical practitioners, right? Who should be able to give focus inputs on, hey, what are the models that we should go after, what kind of data we are going to do, what will happen if there is a drift in the decision making, right? So all those parameters should be considered. The fourth important thing, what I consider, Priya, especially in terms of this engagement solution, right? You should always have this patient first, that empathetic in factors when you provide the context-based responses. It just cannot be like in a GPT, I can put a prompt and the prompt can respond something, right? There should be a context-based awareness, especially when it deals with the patients who are already suffering or getting the treatment. And when we are trying to implement this one, some of the guardrails with respect to this data governance, having that model, having a clear bias, fairness, removing the hallucination, having a multidisciplinary A review board comprises of your infrastructure engineers, data security, analysts, clinical practitioners to make sure the context-based awareness, right, with the human touch or patient first attitude with an empathetic response. Those are all going to be the key elements in terms of the implementation.
Definitely, I think you have highlighted some very critical aspects when it comes to integrating AI in healthcare organizations. And I think it's really important where in healthcare industry specifically, I think it's very important that we balance innovation with responsibility. And I think it's really fascinating to see how agentic AI can empower care delivery, but at the same time, it underscores the importance of trust, transparency, and patient safety. And of course, I very much agree with your point that it's important to also adopt a patient first approach. It's important that we are being empathic and ensure that, we are aligned with medical ethics as well. So I think the potential is huge and, the stakes are equally high. One last question for you, Cody. How do you see the future of agentic AI in healthcare if we had to wrap up?
Yeah. Certainly right. I think we had a very meaningful discussions, and so looking at healthcare as I started my conversation, right? This is going to become a new normal, right? Post COVID, the entire healthcare industry saw a shift where remote patient monitoring or remote consultation became reality. Because normally they will mention, right? Any profession could do work from home, but a doctors or a physician cannot do work from home, right? They got to be with the patient, they got to be in the hospitals, right? But the post-COVID era slightly changed it, right? Except the elective surgeries or some of the life-saving surgeries, where the physician could still operate remote, but can effectively engage the patient, do the right intervention, can do an effective consultation, and in fact can make a better outcome with respect to the diagnosis as well, right? I think the post-COVID era kind of taught the whole world in terms of how the physician could also do a remote patient monitoring without compromising some of the medical ethics and the basic morals in place. Now, with agentic AI going to be in this game, this is going to make lot more meaningful with a lot of compassion. What I meant by this statement is, right, especially in the healthcare industry, right, with the adoption of human AI team, right, it's going to be breathtaking. The diagnosis cycle can be definitely faster, and the way in which we are dealing our administrative task could be shortened, meaning the physician could spend more time with the patients, and the way how they're going to converse would can get easily translated, allow the physician to make the right decision. And more than anything, right, all this human synthetic AI agents or autonomous AI agents have this human in the loop models, right? Because it is not always possible to get 100 percentage correct decision all the time. There could be variance, there could be outliers which needs a physician intervention. So the human in the loop to make a right decision at the right time is going to definitely augment the value of this one. Okay, we have seen the previous eras of automation, whether it could be a robotic tools, whether it could be a health process automation, whether it could be a value stream mapping, right, or it could be a simple script based automation. So everything is started helping out in the way we are doing. So always the physician could see mostly the patients, right? But the new horizons of our generative AI or autonomous AI agents, the LLM models is truly phenomenal because one, you would allow them to learn and make decision, right? You don't have to teach everything. Second thing, it will not be reactive in nature, and it would even auto suggest based on the pathways you can configure. And third important thing, the pathology study where, to be very precise, the radiologist population across the globe compared to the physician is very very minuscule. That's why most of the hospitals, if you see, they rely upon a external radiologist team or an imaging center and everything. With the now AI going to be in place, the pathology study, identifying an early intervention, identifying the risk earlier, identifying the kind of elevated markers little earlier, right, with all this sophisticated tool, definitely going to improve a lot in the physician's life because it could enhance the human judgment. It could definitely improve the care management aspects, right? And I think it is right one say, the clinicians will eventually become AI empowered, healers, right, in the forthcoming days. This means missions would also be there. Artificial intelligence and all this agent AI model will be on the side, but of course, their presence is unquestionable. They will continue to be in the driver's seat, but they will be armed with too many tools, too many agent AI, which could help them to make a decision, a very, very precise and calculative decision, not just a clinical decision in terms of medical treatment. The lot of surgeries we have seen, it's not robotic supported, right? Now it's becoming an AI centric surgery. A recent news, what we learned, published in our IMA is they come up with this AI based diabetic management tool where it's a small strip. You can put it on your any part of the body. It can kind of diagnose your insulin level 24 bar 7. Anytime if the sugar level varies less than 90 for a fasting or greater than 120 after your food intake, it will default inject the insulin into the body. It need not necessarily need an external injection or external pills and everything, right? Normal doctors or normal pathologists will not be able to monitor your sugar level in 24 by 7, but an agentic A based device would be able to monitor your sugar levels throughout the 24 by 7 and can even the amount of insulin to be injected into the body so that your sugar level will not spike, and always making sure that the other vital functions, other organs are well protected, right? As we see, most of the subsequent comorbidities that comes because of diabetic would eventually can see a drop. So that's the power of agentic AI, what means to the healthcare world, right? So long story short, especially the AI team up with human to definitely deliver the better care for the patient is definitely going to revolutionize the way how the care delivery model works, and definitely it should be seen as a huge boom for the patients, for the physician, and to the larger healthcare ecosystem.
Definitely. I think when we are talking about agentic AI, it is truly transforming the healthcare industry by addressing the industry's most pressing challenges. So whether we are talking about tackling clinician administrative burnout to enhancing decision making and ultimately improving patient outcomes, Agentic AI stands out as a crucial tool for healthcare leaders. And as organizations, healthcare organizations face increasing demands, I think adopting agentic AI will not only improve efficiency and reduce cost, but it will also enable providers to focus on high quality and patient centered care. Well, thank you so much, Cody, for taking out the time and effort to be on our podcast today and helping us understand that healthcare leaders can create sustainable and future ready systems that help in delivering better outcomes for patients. And ultimately, the real story is about collaboration, human and AI working together to deliver better care faster and at scale. Thank you so much, Cody. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you so much, team, for this great opportunity. See you soon in another nice podcast. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely, Cody. This is for
Thank
our
you.
listeners. That's it for today's episode of Analytics Insight podcast. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. And I look forward to having you join me next time as we continue exploring the technologies transforming healthcare and beyond. You can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.